Hello and welcome to Trial TV Live. I am the Squeegee of Justice. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We are going to be picking up on day 16 of California versus Monica Sementilli, afternoon. And before we get started, I got my trusty little sidekick right here, little Super Ball. Taking a little bath. Okay, so where we last left off with Monica was day 16 morning, right? So we heard from investigator Richard Guzman. We heard from a detective who was also a trainer, Corbin Rolt. We heard from Fabio's friend, Ernest Bellerano. He was cool. I liked him. Then, excuse me, then we heard from the forensic scientist, Jane Quan. So they broke for lunch. She processed the Porsche. So Jane Quan processed the Porsche. They broke for lunch, and now she is back on the stand. So she's a forensic scientist and a criminalist. Excuse me. Let's get this up here. This is State Witness number 33. Her name is Jane Quan. And thank you guys for joining us. Lily Wayne, catching up again. Irish Amy. Hello. Hello to the kitties. Lily Wayne, catching up. Drunky Bear. Drunky the Bear. Hello, hello. Will Johnson. Hey everyone, just got home from work. Very cool. Irish Amy dropping in Super Ball emojis. Who else is with us? Who was first over? Hola, you were first over. Awesome. Baka, thank you for flying United. Fantastic. Thank you guys. All right, cool. Pammy, you missed a couple of days of testimony, but just going to jump in with you. Yep. Trust me, you didn't really miss much. Chris Gable, he came back in. Chris Gable, yeah, that was day 15. You missed the HR leader, director. Chris Gable testified for like 4 days. He testified day 13, day 14, day 15. Yeah, he testified. Yeah, Pammy, you really did. Yeah, unfortunately, you really haven't missed much. There really hasn't been anything explosive. It's just been repetitive, just layer upon layer upon layer of what was going on. So, all right, yeah, Pammy, trust me, you didn't really miss. There was really nothing. Sadly, there was nothing really new that came out of testimony. So anyway, all right, let us cruise on over here. I think I'm going to have to. I have to reposition myself a little bit. But okay, let's get to. Oh yeah, definitely got to do that. So this is day 16 afternoon as we do our catch up on Monica Sementilli, California versus Monica Sementilli. All right, let's get to it.
And also now joined us. Good afternoon. You know, I was thinking about it. I got so upset at that juror who misspelled my name. I'm denying the days off. No, that's not true. There was other plans that were made, so we will not be off that time. With this proviso, on the 5th, which is Wednesday, we will not be in session on the afternoon. It's not because of the juror who misspelled my name. He's going to be here. We're not. That'll teach you. All right, Ms. Quan, you're still under oath, and people may continue with their drug examination.
Thank you. Ms. Quan, when we broke off for lunch, we were talking about the processing of victim Fabio Sementilli's black Porsche on January 27th of 2017. showing you what's been previously marked as People's 36. Is this the vehicle that you processed on that date at Howard Summers Tow?
Yes.
Same one that we see here in Exhibit 37?
Yes.
What did you notice about the windshield of this particular vehicle?
I noticed that on the front windshield there was a paper licensing attached to it.
Is that what we see here to the right photograph in Exhibit 37?
Yes, ma'am.
And showing you People's 38, again, are these photographs that were taken at the time of processing by the photographer that came out?
Yes.
And so there's no license plate on the vehicle?
There was no license plate.
What did you notice about the condition of the vehicle in terms of the windows and things of that nature?
The front left and the front right windows were rolled all the way up, and then the rear ones were rolled down.
Okay. Was there any key anywhere in the ignition or in the vehicle itself?
There was no key.
Okay. Now, when you process a vehicle or a crime scene such as this, is there a protocol, a standard contamination protocol that you follow?
Yes.
Tell us about that, if you would.
To prevent cross-contamination, I use personal protective equipment. And what that is, essentially, I wear gloves and masks, and I also tie my hair back.
Okay. And how do you go about collecting samples from, let's say, the interior of a vehicle such as this?
So first, I would document the vehicle as is, and I will use flashlight and naked eyes to visualize to see if there's any biological evidence. Then I would use a PID number, which is just a number placed next to the stain to highlight the evidence items, and I will work with the photographer to photograph that.
When you say PID number, what does PID stand for, please?
PID stands for photograph identification.
Okay. And do the PID numbers sometimes correspond with an evidence item number?
Yes.
Okay. And when you collect evidence, do you document in notes that you're taking simultaneously where you're collecting a particular swab from?
Yes.
Along with the date, time, things of that nature?
That's correct.
All right. And then do you also fill out a property report to identify the swabs or samples collected?
Yes, so PID number is a number system that I use at the vehicle searches or crime scenes, and property item gets assigned later at the laboratory when the evidence is ready for long-term storage.
In terms of the property evidence items, when you collect items and then subsequently book those samples into property, do you book them under the unique DR number for the case?
Yes.
And in this case, any evidence that you collected, did you book it under the DR number for LAPD's case 17-21-05194?
Yes.
Do you know who Randy Zepeda is?
Yes.
Who is he?
He is a DNA analyst assigned to the DNA serology unit.
Okay. And was he also assigned to the DNA serology unit back in 2017 at the time that you collected evidence in this case?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. In terms of collecting evidence, did you collect items, as you mentioned, you looked with a flashlight, from not just areas where you could potentially see stains, but also from areas that would be likely to have DNA?
Yes.
Okay. So those would be, can you explain that to us, like what type of areas that would be?
So the areas that would be normally touched, such as door handles, they could have trace amount of DNA deposited onto them. So I cannot visibly see the DNA that could be on the surface, but I did my biological evidence processing to potentially collect for those types of evidence.
Okay. Now, in terms of your collection, in addition to, as we just discussed, areas where you might have seen possible potential biological material, where there was red stains, did you also use some type of a chemical test to aid you in determining which areas to collect from?
Yes.
Tell us about that, if you would.
There's a chemical screening tool. It's a presumptive tool that we use for blood search. And it is a color indicator, and I basically take a small sample of the stain in question, apply the chemical, and to see if it has a reaction. A positive reaction, the chemical turns from a clear color to a very bright color, indicating a positive result.
Did you also use a particular system to identify the locations where you had a positive chemical reaction for, let's say, blood?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Did you also use some type of color-coding system to identify the areas where you obtained a positive notation for biological materials such as blood?
Yes.
How did you go about doing that?
So when I identified a stain that I would like to test, I placed a red sticker next to the stain. And once I applied the chemical and obtained the results, I applied a blue sticker on top of the red sticker when I received a positive reaction.
And did you also make a diagram where you included your notes as you collected samples from various areas inside of the vehicle that we see here in People's Exhibits 36 through 38?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have two diagrams of the exterior and interior of the Porsche. If this document could be marked as People's 193, please.
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 193. Do you recognize what you see here? Let's start with the one on the left.
Yes, that is page 6 of the notes that I generated that day.
Okay. And looking to the right, the diagram on the right, does this show the interior of the Porsche where you have identified the areas from which you collected samples?
Yes.
And they appear to be yellow numbers.
Yes.
What do they represent?
Those represent the PID numbers.
So the photo identification number.
Yes.
I actually have a set of photographs that relate to Exhibit 193. There are 11, including the diagrams. May I have them also collectively marked as People's 193? They have individual numbers in the lower left-hand corner.
All right, you wish to have them as part of 193, so
Yes.
so marked.
Showing you 193, the diagrams was 193, and in the bottom left corner there is a number 7. Now I'm going to show you 193 that has a 12 in the left-hand corner. Did you begin your collection in the driver's compartment?
I started with the driver compartment, yes.
Okay. Does this show us the interior of the driver's side door?
Yes.
And did you see stains in this particular area on the driver's door?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Showing you what's been marked now as 193 that has a 13 in the bottom left corner. This appears to be the same interior driver's door, but now we see that there are PID numbers 11, 12, and 13. I assume this is 11 behind the driver's door handle.
Yes.
And what did you document here with respect to these three areas?
I documented the placement of the stains that I was to test and will collect.
Okay. And as you mentioned earlier, you used colored stickers, a red sticker and a blue sticker. Those are areas where you believed you saw biological evidence?
Yes.
That you could see with the naked eye?
Yes, I saw stains.
And you used that, as you told us, a presumptive chemical test?
Yes.
Okay. And that was used to identify potential biological material?
Yes.
Given that we see that there is a blue sticker on top of the red, does that mean that in each of those three areas, the phenolphthalein test or the chemical test tested positive for biological evidence such as blood?
They tested positive.
Okay. Showing you 193 that has a 14 in the bottom, looking at your placard number or your PID number 11, what do we see here?
There was a red stain in the dripboard-like pattern on the front left driver's side interior panel, and what you see in the picture is PID number 11, close-up view of it, and you also see my sticker, the red sticker and the blue sticker, to indicate the results of that stain.
Is this a stain that we see here, as I'm indicated in the bottom right photograph and also in the top left photograph that appears to be vertical in nature?
Yes.
Looking at 193 that has a 17 in the bottom left corner. Can you tell us what area we're looking at here?
This is the front left seat, and on the seat side of it there are seat controls, and the lever had red stain.
Is that the red stain area that we can see here that I'm pointing to with respect to the seat control?
Yes.
And again, was that an area that tested positive for blood?
Yes.
Looking at Exhibit 193 that has an 18 in the bottom corner. Again, looking at the interior of the driver's door. Actually, this is the, once you're inside the seat, this would be the driver's side seat controls.
Yes.
And again, we see the red sticker with the blue sticker, meaning that this was an area that tested positive for blood?
Yes, it tested positive using the phenolphthalein test.
Okay. And this is the same area where we see the red staining in the photograph to the bottom right that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
What about the steering wheel? What did you note with respect to the steering wheel?
There was also a stain on the steering wheel.
Showing you Exhibit 193 that has a 15 in the bottom left corner. Again, this is the steering wheel area.
Yes.
Showing you 193 that has a 16 in the bottom left corner. This area here, where again we see the red and the blue sticker. Is this the area from which you collected a stain?
Yes.
And if we look at the photograph to the right, that would be this area here that I'm pointing to, just above your red sticker?
Yes, ma'am.
Where you have an arrow pointing on the red sticker?
Yes.
And what did you notice with respect to the clutch?
There was a stain on the clutch pedal.
Did you initially in your notes indicate this was a brake pedal?
Yes.
And then you subsequently made a correction and identified it as a clutch?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at 193 with a 19 in the bottom left corner, which of these pedals are we talking about?
The one on the left.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 193 that has a 20 in the bottom left corner. looking at the pedal to the left where you have a placard with a number 23. Again, looking at your stickers, is this the area with the arrow pointing to the location where you saw that red stain?
Yes.
Did you also communicate with criminalists within the lab who are charged with making diagrams?
I contacted architectural drafting technician,
Was that Alan Perez and at that time Maria Catango?
Maria Contengo.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 193 that has an 8 in the bottom left corner. Is this the diagram that represented the various areas where you collected stains and where biological material was found?
Yes.
When you went through the collection process, how did you go about collecting swabs from each location?
Wearing personal protective equipment to avoid cross-contamination. I also used sterile swabs and sterile water in collection to protect the quality of the evidence. It is essentially like a giant Q-tip. I apply sterile water, and then I apply that moistened swab to the stain or the area of interest.
So, all in all, how many swabs did you collect from the interior, the driver's compartment, and the passenger compartment of this vehicle?
There are a total of 23 swabs collected.
Okay. And when you told us about how you used a Q-tip with sterile water to collect these items, did you use a different Q-tip? It's like a long Q-tip, right?
Yes.
From each area?
Yes.
All right. And then did you package them separately into separate bindles?
Yes.
Subsequently, did you fill out a property report with respect to those 23 swabs that you collected, numbering them numbers 44 through 66?
Yes.
In terms of the architectural diagrams that were created in the lab, did those, you reviewed those and they were accurate with respect to what you collected?
Yes.
Now I want to turn to June 15th of 2017. Did you also process a 2000 Black Ford Expedition belonging to an individual by the name of Robert Baker under license plate D584G0?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have a series of 16 sets of photographs regarding this vehicle. May they be marked collectively as Peoples 194, and again, they have numbers in the bottom left corner.
Yes.
Thank you. And where did your processing of this particular vehicle take place?
It took place in our laboratory, one of the vehicle bays.
Okay. And was a robbery homicide detective, Detective Carlos Camacho, present?
Yes.
Once again, did you work with a photographer from the crime lab or the forensic science division?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 194. This one has a 3 in the bottom left corner. Is this the vehicle that you processed on June 15th at the crime lab, 2017?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 4 in the bottom left corner. Again, is that the same vehicle?
Yes.
And is that also the same vehicle that we see in 194 that has a 5 in the bottom left corner?
Yes.
And did you recover various items from the interior of this vehicle?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has an 8 in the bottom left corner. Did you recover a black Targus bag with miscellaneous personal and electronic items from the second row?
Yes.
And did that also include a racquetball bag, several rackets, and racquetball related items?
The racquetball bag was on the second row seat.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 9 in the bottom lower corner. Are these the items that you recovered from the second row area?
Those are the items that I found at this vehicle search.
Again, from the second row seat behind the driver?
They're the items inside the vehicle and also the items found in the second row seat, yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 10 in the bottom lower corner. Again, are these some of the items that you recovered from the second row floor space?
Some of those were recovered by me, and the items were found in the Targus bag that was found on the second row floor space.
And the items that weren't recovered by you, you had another criminalist that you were working with that day?
Could you repeat the question?
The items that weren't recovered by you, were those recovered by another criminalist that was working with you that day?
Yes.
Okay. And they were recovered in your presence?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 14 in the bottom left corner. Did you also recover several memory cards from the vehicle?
Yes.
And did you itemize those as items 150 through 157 under PID 14?
May I refer to my notes?
Sure.
PID 14 and its contents were booked as items 150 to 157.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 19 in the lower left corner. Is this the item, a memory card? It looks like a SanDisk 32 gigabyte memory card that you booked as item 157 in this case.
May I refer to my notes again?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And the writing on the envelope that we see here in the bottom left corner, is that your writing?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the envelope into which you booked items 154 through 157 as we see written below the DR number?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you 194 that has a 16 in the bottom left corner. Is this another memory card, item 151 under PID 14?
Yes.
Did you also collect items from the third row of this vehicle?
May I refer to my notes?
Sure.
I swapped for touch DNA in the third row.
Did you collect items from the third row? Let me show you Exhibit 194. It has a 20 in the bottom left corner.
Your Honor, could she answer the previous question?
Does this
Actually, I will allow the question to be asked.
Does this assist you with respect to the items that were recovered from the third row?
Those items were not recovered, they were photo documented.
Okay, they were photo documented.
Yes.
Okay, my mistake. And these were items, though, that you did find, find in the third row, correct?
Yes.
Leading.
I found the black luggage and its contents in the third row, but I did not recover them. I photo documented them.
Okay. You took them out.
Yes.
You laid them out as we see here in this photo.
Yes.
And then you had the photographer from the crime lab photo them.
Yes.
And then you put them all back in?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194, number 21, page 21. Again, are these items that you took out of the third row area for photo documentation as we see here?
Yes.
In addition to the items that we see in 194 that has a 24 in the bottom left corner.
Yes.
And with respect to the items that were found in the third row, did it also include miscellaneous clothing that appeared to be from a woman?
Yes.
Okay. Such as underwear and things of that nature?
Yes.
Did you also find various personal items such as condoms in the third row?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 25 in the lower left corner. Again, is this another photograph taken to photo document those same items we've been talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there also a receipt found amongst those items?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194. It has a 26 in the bottom left corner. Appears to be a receipt of a place called Eden Sky on Melrose, dated April 21st, 2017, at 6:05 at night.
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 22 in the lower left corner. Were these items that, again, you photo documented that were contained in a some kind of an Eddie Bauer bag?
Yes, this was a photograph to show the third row seat area, and the one on the bottom left is the Eddie Bauer bag.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 23 in the bottom left corner. Again, is this a photograph of the items that were removed from the floor space?
Yes.
In this particular vehicle, did you have a key in the ignition unlike the Porsche?
Yes.
Okay. And did you note anything about the windows of this particular vehicle?
The windows were tinted and they were rolled all the way up.
I'm sorry?
They were tinted and they were also rolled all the way up.
Okay. Did you find any foreign currency in the vehicle?
I did not.
Any phones, cell phones,
I did not.
knives,
I did not.
hoodies?
I did not.
Again, with respect to all of the evidence or any of the items that you did collect from in the interior of this vehicle, did you, such as the memory cards, did you package and book those items under the same DR that we spoke of with respect to Fabio Sementilli's Porsche?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Babich.
Good afternoon, Ms. Quan.
Hello.
You're processing the Porsche on January 27th, 2017, and then processing the Ford Expedition on June 15, or was it June 15 or June 14th?
June 15th.
June 15th. That was the extent of your role in this matter, correct?
I processed the 2 vehicles.
Once you collected the samples, you didn't match or test the DNA or anything like that afterwards, correct?
That is beyond my scope.
Understood. And did you collect any DNA samples from the Ford Expedition?
I did.
And you booked those samples and transported them back to the lab?
I swapped the areas for possible biological material, touch DNA as I explained earlier, and I collected them and I booked them also.
And the Ford Expedition was processed roughly over 4 months after the date of the murder, correct? About 5 months after the date of...
That would call for speculation on the part.
Sustained.
Well, you testified previously that you were filled in on certain details about the investigation, correct?
Correct.
To have an idea of what to look for when you're processing the vehicle?
Correct.
You were told the date of the murder was January 23rd, 2017, correct?
I believe so.
And so the processing of the Ford Expedition occurred on June 15th, 2017, right?
That's correct.
Regarding the Ford Expedition, you said no knives were recovered, correct?
That's correct.
And after you finished processing, do you have these items? Do you have any idea what happened to them afterwards? In terms of how they were tested, who tested them, or anything like that?
No.
No?
My role is to recover evidence from the scene or vehicle searches and prepare them for long-term packaging, long-term storage, and that is the extent of my role.
And you also, I believe, clarified that your job was to recover biological or physical evidence, correct? Can you
Correct.
explain briefly the difference between biological and physical evidence?
When I refer to biological evidence, I am specifically looking for things of like blood or semen or touch DNA sort of type of evidence. When I say physical evidence, I'm looking for more like non-DNA evidence such as firearms or knives or actual objects that are not focused on DNA.
Understood. And you received a briefing prior to processing the Ford Expedition as well, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Other people.
When you said that you processed the Ford Expedition, you processed the Ford Expedition for potential DNA, not necessarily DNA, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Anything further, Ben? Thank you, Ms. Quan. You're excused. You may call the next witness.
Thank you. People call Randy's payout.
Please face me, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Randy Zepeda. RANDYZEPEDA.
Thank you. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed?
I'm employed by the Los Angeles Police Department, Forensic Sciences Division.
And are you assigned to a particular area or division within the lab?
Yes, I'm assigned to the Serology DNA unit.
And how many years have you been assigned to the DNA unit?
About 15 years now.
What is serology, if you could tell us?
Serology is kind of just an antiquated term for the analysis of biological fluids.
And what is DNA?
DNA is a molecule that's found in most of the cells of your body that acts as like a blueprint for your body. So it tells your body not only how to build itself, but how to function. DNA is unique to every individual, aside from identical twins.
And it remains the same throughout our life? In other
Yes.
words, if you were to take blood or a oral sample, what's referred to as a buccal swab, my profile would remain constant?
Yes, as far as the forensic DNA profile, that remains constant throughout your whole life.
Okay. What are your responsibilities within the DNA serology unit?
In the serology unit, we deal mostly with biological evidence. So my job is to identify any potential biological evidence, sample that evidence, preserve it, analyze it. I'll issue reports. I'll also technically review reports issued by other analysts and work completed by other analysts, and I'll testify in court to those results.
Okay. And you generate reports yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in terms of the DNA process, has that changed throughout the course of your work on this case that you're here to testify about?
Yes, it's changed in the fact that we look at more locations in our DNA now, but the overall process is still just about the same.
In terms of the process itself, is the DNA process within your lab and other crime labs across the country done by instrumentation in terms of various steps in the process?
Yes, some steps are more labor intensive for the analyst than others, but for the most part, most steps we use some sort of instrument or liquid handling robot to assist us in performing our analysis.
Now, we heard earlier about, from Jane Quan, about the lab certification or accreditation process by an individual outside agency. Are there certain standards and protocols that you follow within the DNA or serology unit with respect to methodology, validation, instrumentation, and things like that?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And in order to ensure that the results that you obtain are reliable, accurate, and are reproducible, do you follow, again, a certain protocol and with respect to every single case that you touch?
Yes, we have protocols in set for every procedure we perform in the lab.
And with respect to this case and all cases in general within the serology unit, are case files generated that contain all of your results as well as the results from any of the instrumentation that is utilized during the process of developing, let's say, DNA profiles?
Yes, so with any case, we produce a case packet. And basically, like she said, that's a packet of all of the documentation that we produce for that case. So it can be handwritten notes from observations we make in the lab of the evidence, or printouts from instrumentation that we've used to perform various steps of our analysis. We maintain all of those in one place, one case packet. And this is my case packet here today, so I bring it even just to reference what I've done in this case.
Okay. And in terms of the DNA unit or the serology unit itself, are there also quality assurance measures or controls that are in place for, let's say, purposes of contamination? To prevent
Yes.
contamination.
Yes, there are.
Can you tell us briefly about those?
Yes, some quality assurance measures that we take into place are things like wearing personal protective equipment. So personal protective equipment not only protects us from the evidence, but the evidence from our own contamination. So we'll wear things like masks, we'll wear gloves, we wear laboratory coats, sometimes we'll even wear hairnets. And these things we change, especially our gloves, in between handling different items of evidence. We also do things like analyzing evidence samples separately from reference samples.
Let me stop you just there, and we'll move on to the rest of that answer, but you just brought up something important. Can you explain to us the difference between a reference sample and an evidence sample?
An evidence sample is an unknown sample. So it's something that we locate at the crime scene, or we sample off an item, and we don't know the source of that sample. We don't know where that DNA might potentially come from. A reference sample is a known sample. So that's a sample that's taken directly from the individual to use for comparison to an evidence sample.
Do reference samples tend to come in the form of one or two different sources?
Yes, in general, we get reference samples that are usually oral samples, so swabs of the inside of your mouth, or blood reference samples, which are blood cards that are generated by the coroner's office.
And do you test evidence samples on separate times from reference samples, so again, not to cross-contaminate the evidence?
Yes, so we analyze references completely separate from evidence samples.
Okay. Back to some of the quality assurance measures that are in place in the DNA section. Is the DNA section and the lab itself also secure facilities and areas?
Yes.
And does the DNA section also maintain a database where, if, let's say, you were to get a profile that you didn't expect, or that you could run through the database that contains criminalists from the crime lab, their DNA reference samples to cross-compare to ensure that you're not putting your own DNA into a sample?
Yes, we do maintain a quality control database that has even my own reference sample contained with it, where we can check when we get unknown samples or an unknown DNA profile from a sample that it's not our own contamination into that item.
And in terms of your work, is it also peer-reviewed?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does peer review mean?
Peer review means that all of the work that we complete gets re-looked at by another analyst. So even from forms that we generate to my final case laboratory report that I generate, a second analyst will go through, look at each one of those items, and they'll sign to a test that essentially they would come to the same conclusions that whoever is authoring either that page or that report came to. In addition to the peer review, we also have an administrative review process, which is a second review by someone like a supervisor, but that's more for the content of the report, as well as things like grammar and spelling, things like that.
And all of that is done for the purpose of what?
To maintain the accuracy in our results.
In terms of the certification within the DNA unit, are you required to undergo proficiency testing on a regular basis?
Yes, twice a year.
What is proficiency testing?
Proficiency testing is a test that's administered to us by an outside agency. They know what the results of the test are. We do not. And we treat it essentially like a regular case. So I would analyze it as if I was analyzing a evidence sample from a crime scene. I produce a report, and all those reports and results go back to that outside agency, and they'll say, yes, you performed these tests as expected, you obtained the correct DNA profiles, you made the correct comparisons.
Can you tell us a little bit about your education, training, and experience that qualifies you for your position in the lab?
Yes, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from the California State University, Los Angeles, as well as Master's of Science coursework in Biology, also from the California State University, Los Angeles. I've attended several trainings with the California Department of Justice, California Criminalistics Institute, in the fields of forensic biology, as well as forensic DNA typing. I've also had separate in-house LAPD training in forensic biology and forensic DNA typing. Those were both years-long trainings. Ever since I was initially trained, I'm also required to attend continuing education courses at least once a year. So since I became a DNA analyst in 2013, every year I've taken an additional course of continuing education since my original training.
Approximately how many case samples would you say you've analyzed using DNA typing techniques?
Tens of thousands.
And have you also qualified and testified before with respect to DNA analysis and the results multiple times?
Yes.
Tell us what is, or describe for us what is DNA typing.
DNA typing is essentially producing a DNA profile from an unknown or reference sample. Now, a DNA profile is essentially we're looking at different locations in your DNA. Currently, we look at 23 different locations plus a gender marker. These are locations in your DNA that are variable, so they're different from individual to individual, but like I mentioned earlier, they're also stable throughout your lifetime. Now, at each one of these locations, you have essentially two numbers. So let's say I'm looking at the first location, you'll have two numbers. One of those numbers you get from your mother, one of those numbers you get from your father. And we'll look at all of those 23 different locations. We essentially get those number pairs for every single one of those locations, and that is your DNA profile. And we can use that to compare it to, like I said, items of evidence. We can compare it to other DNA profiles. And we can, from there, even calculate statistics on how rare that association is.
Is there a standard procedure that's utilized in the crime lab and the same across, let's say, the country or maybe even the world that is used to develop a DNA profile, whether it be from a reference sample or an evidence sample?
In general, yes, the procedure is pretty much the same no matter which lab, forensic lab that you're working in. Now, the different chemicals that we use or instrumentation might be different, but in general, the process of obtaining a DNA profile is pretty consistent, not only throughout the country, but throughout the whole world.
And are there particular steps that are used in processing samples?
Yes.
What's the first step?
The first step in general in processing a DNA evidence sample is extraction. Now, extraction is when you take a sample. So in any given case, I'll have, let's say, several tubes labeled with case identifiers for that specific case, unique to this case, and I'll add some chemicals to it. And what those chemicals do is they break open the cells and release the DNA from the cells. Now, after the DNA is extracted from those cells, I can run it through a different instrument or a different robotic instrument to clean up that sample, essentially removing all the other cellular junk and proteins, just leaving the DNA behind.
Okay. What's the next step?
The next step is quantitation. That's when I take that sample I produce after that first step and I measure how much DNA is in that sample. We need to know how much DNA we have so we can know if we can move on to the next step or how to basically treat the samples for that next step.
You need a certain amount of DNA present in order to run the DNA tests, correct?
Yes, we have a minimum amount of DNA that we need to even attempt to obtain a DNA profile, but there's also a range of DNA that we target for our next step.
And your laboratory and section set thresholds for minimum amounts, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What's the next stage? Let's say you were to be able to determine that you had sufficient DNA to proceed. What's the next stage?
The next step would be amplification, where we make copies of the DNA that we have, and these copies are kind of special. We add basically markers to them, fluorescent markers, so we can visualize those copies in the final step, which is the DNA typing step.
And you said the final step's the instrumentation set.
The final step is our DNA typing, but we use instruments to visualize that DNA.
Okay. So when you initially started your work on this case back in 2017, did you look at a different number of markers or locations on the DNA than you do now? You told us now you use 23 plus a gender marker. What was the number back when you first started out doing testing on this case in 2017?
In 2017, we looked at 15 different locations plus a gender marker.
Okay. And what was the testing kit that you used in 2017?
We used a kit called Identifiler.
Okay. And that was the industry standard at the time, correct?
Yes, many labs use the identifier kit.
And going forward, at some point, your lab, as well as other labs across the country, transitioned, as you talked about, to these testing kits where we now look at 23 different locations. Plus.
Yes, all labs were federally mandated to begin to use an expanded kit. So we switched to a kit that looks at 23 different locations plus the gender typing.
What kit is that?
That is Fusion 6C.
In terms of the evidence that you processed in this case, did all of that take place under a particular LAPD case number, DR number?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that DR number 17-21-5194?
05194.
Okay. And did you also receive, or were you provided with reference samples in this case?
Yes, I was.
Back in 2017, were you provided with a reference sample or an oral swab for an individual by the name of Robert Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that identified as item number 158 under this DR number for this case?
Yes, it was.
Okay. At some point subsequent to the reference sample for Robert Baker, were you also provided with an oral swab or a reference sample for defendant Monica Sementilli?
Yes, I was.
And was that identified under that same DR number as item number 201?
Yes, it was.
Did you also receive numerous blood stains from a crime scene collected by Corey Hawk?
Yes.
And did you know Corey Hawk from the lab?
Yes, I did.
Was she somebody that worked in your field identification unit, someone that would go out to crime scenes and process crime scenes or vehicles or things of that nature?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you also receive a collection of swabs from a Jane Quan, who just left the courtroom as you came in, from the victim's Porsche?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you develop profiles for the reference samples in this case?
I did.
Did you also, at some point in time, receive a reference sample for the victim? I think you talked about reference samples that you normally get from the coroner's department. Did you get one from the coroner's department in this case?
Yes.
And again, was that a bloodstain card for victim Fabio Sementilli?
Yes, it was a reference blood sample.
What item number was that?
That was item 72.
Okay. So that was your a third reference that we talked about so far, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you develop profiles from the evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk?
Yes.
Did you also develop DNA profiles from the evidence profiles you received from Jane Quan?
I did, yes.
From the evidence samples you received from Jane Quan.
Yes.
And then once you developed profiles from all of the evidence, did you make a comparison over a course of many years to the reference sample profiles that you developed?
I did, yes.
And did you write numerous reports in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I want to start with your initial report from February 9th of 2017. Did you reference in that particular report evidence samples from the crime scene as well as the Porsche?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you screen various evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk for blood?
Yes.
And did the evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk screen positive for blood?
Yes, these were positive for a presumptive test for blood.
Okay.
Yes.
Same type of chemical test that would show you a particular color if it tested positive for blood?
Yes, it is a color change test.
Okay. And
Can you just go a second if I might?
sure.
Let's stand up and stretch. You don't have to take this on the record. One of the issues.
Thank you. With respect to your February 9th of 2017 report, did you determine that there were samples that matched the victim's DNA profile in this case?
Yes, there was a sample that matched the victim's profile.
Or samples?
Yes, from this initial report, there's only one sample that initially matched the victim's profile.
Show you an exhibit that's already been marked as People 7. Has a 3 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
I do.
And what is this?
This was a exhibit that was created by our architectural drafting aide to demonstrate where different items of evidence were located at the crime scene.
All right. And there's also a key to the right that identifies item numbers by the photo ID number along with whether or not they screened positive for blood and then were marked as red versus items that did not and therefore black. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you work with the individuals in the architectural unit or at least review this particular exhibit previously to determine its accuracy?
Yes, I didn't help create it, but I did review it after they created it.
And was it accurate in terms of the results that you obtained?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also review, in this case, crime scene photographs with respect to a location where the victim was murdered?
Yes.
Okay. And in reviewing those crime scene photographs, did they assist you in determining which particular swabs may be more fruitful to test for DNA, depending on where they were located and what that area looked like?
Yes, ultimately it's up to the investigators which samples we analyze, but me conferring with the investigators, I can give them an idea of what are the best items to choose for DNA typing.
Okay. So you confer with detectives, prosecutors to assist in narrowing down the selection?
And mostly just detectives, but yes.
Okay. Looking at People's 7 that has a 39 in the lower left corner. If we look at PID number 18, which appears to be that circle of red, PID 18 on the counter area, is that one of the items that was tested?
Yes.
By you?
Yes.
And did that, again, screen positive for blood?
Yes, it screened presumptively positive for blood.
And did that stain match the victim's reference profile or DNA profile in this case?
So for this specific item, picture ID 18, we received a partial DNA profile, and that was consistent with the DNA profile of Fabio Sementilli.
Okay. Showing you what was previously marked as People's 7. It has a 49 in the lower left corner. The entryway to this crime scene at the front door. If we look at what's been tagged there as PID 23, again, looks very similar to the circular red stain that we saw on the counter. This area here, was that another sample that tested positive for blood?
Yes, it tested presumptively positive for blood.
And again, did this particular item match to the victim's DNA profile in this case?
Yes, this was also a partial DNA profile, and it was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. Previously marked People's 193 with an 8 in the lower left corner. Is this another architectural diagram relative to the victim's Porsche that you previously reviewed in this case? Yes.
And just like the legend or key that we saw with respect to People's 7, number 3, the diagram of the crime scene, does this legend here that we see at the top also appear to be consistent with or accurate for the results you obtained with respect to what tested positive for blood and what did not?
Yes, I did previously review this diagram.
Okay. What's been previously marked as People's 193 with the 20 in the lower left corner. In addition to the crime scene photos, did you also review photographs of the interior, the driver's compartment area of his Porsche?
Yes, I have seen them.
Okay. And with respect to what we see here, PID 23, the brake or the clutch, I think it was referenced as a brake pedal initially and then changed to clutch. Again, was that another swab that screened positive for blood and matched the victim's DNA profile?
Yes, so this one actually screened presumptively positive for blood, and this was a complete profile. So this was a DNA profile from one individual, a complete profile, and that one matched the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
If hypothetically someone walked through the victim's blood and tracked it into a vehicle, would this be commonly an area that you would test for potential DNA?
I mean, yes, if somebody walked through a bloody crime scene and then drove a car away, I would test the car pedals to see if there was potentially blood.
Okay. series of 3 DNA charts. They have numbers 5, 7, and 8. 5, 6, and 7 in the bottom left corner. May they be marked as Peoples 195, please?
Yes.
Showing you what's now been marked as Peoples 195 as a 5 in the lower corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, so this is a summary of my DNA typing results for several items.
Okay. What do we see here along the left column in white under genetic locus tested? What is that?
So earlier when I mentioned that when I initially started this case, I was looking at 15 different locations plus a melagenin, or the gender typing. These are the names of those 15 different locations, plus the AMEL, which is a melagenin or a gender typer. The profile at each one of those locations, those are the numbers I was talking about. So let's say the top one where it's D8, if you look over at the victim, he's a 12-15. So you would have gotten the 12 from from one of his parents, and the 15 from his other parent. Now, if you go down to CSF 1P0, the fourth one down, you'll see there's only 11. Well, that's actually an 11-11. So we got an 11 from his mom and an 11 from his dad. We just notated as a singular 11 when they have the same number for both copies.
That's your lab's protocol.
Yes.
So if we go down, let's say to TPOX or VWA, we see that happen again, or D18 or D5, correct? I'm sorry, not D5, just D18, correct?
Yes, so VWA, TPOX, and D18, those would be so VWA would be an 18-18, TPOX an 8-8, and D18 a 15-15. Now some labs do notate it as the number twice, but we just write the number one time in our lab.
So item 72, that's the reference sample we talked about earlier that you received, the blood card or the blood stain card from the coroner's office for victim Fabio Sementilli in this case.
Yes, that's correct.
So this would be the DNA profile that you developed back in 2017 based on that blood stain card.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you use this reference profile to make comparisons to evidence profiles that you then develop from evidence items?
Yes.
Okay. And if we look at amylogenin, the gender marker, we see here an XY. What does that mean?
XY indicates male. XX or just X would indicate female.
Okay. If we look at the column next to the victim's profile where it says kitchen counter, item 17, that would be the item number under the property report of this DR, correct?
Yes.
And PID would be the photo ID number 18. What do we see here in this column?
That's a summary of the DNA typing results for that specific item.
That you obtained?
Yes.
Okay. That's the kitchen counter that we looked at. In Exhibit 7 that has a 39 in the lower left corner. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, you make a comparison between the victim's DNA profile and the evidence item, correct? The profile you developed from the actual evidence item.
Yes, so one of the steps of a comparison is to actually just visually compare those DNA types. So I would go through and look at, what's the first location, D8. It's the victim is a 12-15. The kitchen counter is a 12-15. That's consistent. Then I would go location by location. At the end of the evidence profile, you see there's two locations down here that say ND. That stands for no data. These I indicated earlier were partial DNA profiles. We didn't obtain DNA profile information for those two locations.
So that's why you clarified and said that with respect to these two samples, the evidence item, you developed a profile that was consistent with the victim, whereas in the third, you actually got data at those locations, D5 and FGA, and you were able to say it's a match.
Yes, so we'll only be able to say match if it's matches at every single location. Now, if we have an instance like this, where we have two locations where we didn't obtain data, we would only say consistent with.
Also, when you are interpreting the data, you aren't looking at the numbers or the alleles that are reported out. You actually look at the raw data as it comes off the instrumentation itself, correct?
We look at the raw data as it's coming off the instrument itself, in addition to the numbers or the summary for each different location, just because it's, like I said, in simplest terms, one of the steps is to look at the physical numbers that we obtain and compare those numbers, but we also look at things like the quality of the data that we're obtaining. So even though we let's say we have a DNA profile where we get information at every single location, if the quality is bad, then we might not use that for comparison.
Okay. And again, we talked earlier about how there are thresholds that are set in the lab. We're not going to get into a whole conversation about that, but any information that falls or data that falls below the laboratory's threshold is information that you may or may not take into consideration in reporting out.
So yeah, so whenever we bring on a DNA typing kit, we always perform a validation study. And essentially what that is we use that study to do things like set thresholds or quality indicators for evidence. We learn how the evidence is going to behave in our laboratory with our equipment. We're able to set thresholds based on that.
Okay. And again, if we look over here in the final column, that's from the Porsche, the clutch that we talked about.
Yes.
Okay. Which matches the victim.
Yes.
Okay. I want to move on to a report that you drafted dated July 25th of 2017. Were you provided at this point, or by this point, with the reference sample for Robert Baker?
Yes, I was.
And we talked about that came in the format or the source of a buccal swab or an oral swab from the interior of the mouth.
Yes.
Okay. And did the swab itself, or the swabs that you received with respect to this reference sample for Robert Baker, come in an envelope from LAPD detectives Tellis and Gable that contained identifying information with respect to the individual Robert Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you develop a profile for Robert Baker?
Yes, I did.
And is it a typical procedure that you would obtain reference samples perhaps at a time later after you receive evidence samples?
Yes, sometimes when I begin analysis on a case, I have no reference samples at all.
Showing you what's now been marked as People's 195 that has a 7 in the lower left corner. Can you tell us what we see here in this column that is blue next to the various locations that are tested?
Yes, this is a summary of the DNA profile of Robert Baker.
And again, if we look over one column, we see a column that at the top says kitchen floor, item 9, PID 9. Is this the DNA profile that you developed for that particular sample?
Yes, ma'am.
Would that be consistent with what we see in People's 7 that has a number 32 in the lower left corner for PID numbers 9? We'll start with 9.
Yes.
And so this is the DNA profile you developed from that blood stain.
Yes.
We look one over to item 10, PID 10. Is this the DNA profile that you developed from the stain that we see here? Again, people 7 has a 32 in the lower left corner, this blood stain here.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the far right, we see, again, a column that's marked garage floor, item 43, PID 36. Is that consistent with what we see here in people 7 that has a 16 in the lower left corner? What we see here in 36 and a close-up of that red stain.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, did you make a comparison between the reference profile you developed for Robert Baker to these various stains at the crime scene, both in the kitchen, on the floor, and on the garage floor?
Yes, I did.
And what was your determination?
The DNA profiles from these items matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Councilman Murphy, it's time to take our
Recess for 15 minutes. The admission applies.
All right, we can zoom, but I'm going to do a quick little recap here. So Jane Quan was on right after lunch. She processed the Porsche on January 27th. Remember, this happened on the 23rd of January. There's no license plate, but the paper plate in the window. Not sure what the point of that was, I guess because it was fresh. I don't know. Front windows were rolled up, but the back were down. There was no key. Then they showed the stains all the stains, all the places where she swabbed. Steering wheel and then the clutch. I'm like, what? There was blood on the clutch, but then the next guy, Randy Zapata, excuse me, Randy Zapata explained that. All in all, Jane collected 23 swabs. She also swabbed Baker's Ford Expedition. There was women's clothing and underwear. Condoms were found in a pouch. Of course there were. Then there was a receipt from Eden Sky. They didn't really explain what Eden Sky was. But no knives were recovered in Baker's truck, and we knew that. There was no knives ever recovered in this. And then right now is Randy Zapata. He's a forensic DNA expert. He's a serologist. Blood was found in the entryway that tested positive for Fabio. If someone walked through a bloody crime scene, he would test the car pedals, so that's how, that makes sense. And then Robert Baker was found on items all over the freaking house. So, I mean, I get it. Let's just get to enough of the, come on, I just want something that we haven't heard of 20,000 times before, but let's zoom.
Back to Exhibit 195 that has a 7 in the lower left corner. We were talking about the comparisons that you made to the stains on the kitchen floor and the garage floor. Can you tell us, with respect to item 9 or PID 9, what were you able to determine?
So this was the swab of the red stain from the floor. This item matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Okay. And what about the next item, PID 10, item 10, again, the other stain on the kitchen floor?
This item also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And if we look at the profiles next to each other, we're talking about the exact same profile, correct?
Yes, you see the same numbers at every single location.
And then the garage floor, the column to the far right, item 43, PID 36. What did you determine regarding that item?
That was the swab of the reddish brown stain from the floor. That DNA profile matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Showing you what's now been marked as Exhibit 195 that has a 6 in the lower left corner. Again, looking at the reference sample in blue, the DNA profile you developed for Robert Baker, but now looking at evidence samples recovered from the Porsche, the left door panel, the interior left door panel, what do we see here? Which would be item 54, PID 11.
Yes. This DNA profile also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And the one next to that, the left, or the driver's seat controls, which is item 61, PID 18. What were your conclusions about that particular item?
This DNA profile also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Okay. And again, just for reference, the interior driver's door in Exhibit 193 that has a 14 in the bottom left corner. This is the stain here that you tested, correct?
Yes.
And with respect to the driver's seat control in Exhibit 193 that has an 18 on the bottom left, again, this red stain that we see next to the red sticker with the arrow pointing to the stain?
Yes.
Now, did you, when you say it matched to Baker, you talked to us before the break about being able to calculate statistics to determine the rarity of a particular profile. Did you calculate statistics in this case?
I did.
And what did you determine with respect to all of these results contained in Exhibit 195, 6, 195, 7?
So the DNA profiles obtained from, I'll go through the item numbers, item 43, 54, 61, 9, and 10 occur approximately 1 in 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
1 in 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
If we hear the number quintillion, I mean, most of us know what a million or a billion or maybe even a trillion, but when we talk about a quintillion, how many zeros are we talking about?
5 quintillion is a 5 followed by 18 zeros.
Okay. So what is the current population of the Earth, approximately?
At the time we did this testing, it was about 7 billion individuals.
It's probably somewhat greater than that, but not quite 8, correct?
It's around 8 now.
Okay. So how many times the population of the planet Earth would you need before you would see that number again, that profile?
So if you, Earth, like I said, is at this time was about 7 billion individuals, you would need 700 million populations the size of Earth. So 700 million times what Earth's population is to have 5 quintillion. So on average, we'd only expect to see this DNA profile 1 in every 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay, so we're talking about a very rare DNA profile here.
It's a very small number, yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about a report that you authored that was dated November 9th of 2017 with respect to, again, various samples such as Evidence from the crime scene. We look at what's been previously marked as People's 8 that has the number 11 in the lower left corner. Placard or PID number 1, this blood stain that we see here out on the patio area. Did you do an analysis of that stain?
Yes, I did.
And what result did you obtain?
This DNA profile was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, it was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
Okay. And did you calculate a statistic?
Yes. So in this case, because when I analyzed the reference initially, I was only analyzing 15 locations. Once I got to this request, we had already changed over to looking at 23 different locations. So I only had 15 locations to compare because of the limitation of the reference. So using 15 of 23 locations, this DNA profile occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay. So again, you told us a quintillion has 18 zeros.
Yes, so this would be a 2 followed by 18 zeros.
How about PID number 3 that we see here in People's 8 that has a number 12 in the lower left corner? Again, another stain from the patio area. Did you obtain a result for that particular stain?
Yes, this DNA profile is also consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli, and it was the same statistic. So using using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA profile obtained occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay. What about the stain that we can see here in People's Exhibit 7 has a 41 in the lower left corner. Looks like it's on the door jamb area leading to the patio from the kitchen.
Yes, so this was a red stain on the back door interior door jamb. This DNA profile that I obtained from this item was also consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli, and using 15 of 23 23 locations, the DNA profile obtained occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Looking at the stain inside the kitchen under PID 12, in People's Exhibit 7 with a 29 in the lower left corner, a stain on this drawer here, the exterior of the drawer. Did you obtain DNA results for that particular blood stain?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
So we call this a swab of reddish-brown stain on the cabinet. This was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, meaning that we had DNA from at least 2 different people, including at least 2 males. The major DNA profile obtained from this item, so a major DNA profile is sometimes when we're able to perform a DNA analysis, we can determine a major profile. So we can see that there's the DNA from 2 people there, but based on the intensity of the peaks that we get during our analysis, so when the DNA profile is actually coming off the instrument, the raw data, we're able to determine a major profile. So it's a DNA profile that's much more intense than the other. So in this case, we were able to determine a major DNA profile. And the major DNA profile obtained from this item was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. So using 15 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals. The DNA profile of the minor contributor cannot be determined. So I wasn't able to do anything with that minor contributor, that second person.
The major contributor, that just means that that individual looking at the peak heights contributed more DNA to the stain than the other, the minor.
Yes, so the intensity of those peaks of that DNA profile was more intense. So I was able to parse out that separate DNA profile.
And this also was a stain that tested positive for blood?
Yes, this was also positive for a presumptive test for blood.
Looking at the stain that we see on the leading edge deadbolt in Exhibit 724, PID 14. This red stain that we can see here, you were able to obtain results from that particular stain?
Yes, so we call this reddish stain from the garage door leading a deadbolt. So the DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 2 males. The major DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. So using 15 of 23 different locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The DNA profile of the minor contributor cannot be determined.
Okay. So again, you had one individual who contributed more DNA to the mixture profile than the other.
Yes.
Okay. Let me give you a hypothetical. If the killer were to have, after murdering Mr. Sementilli on the back patio, came through the kitchen, through this door that we see here where we have the PID 14, and went into the garage and had blood from the victim on his hands, would that be consistent with the type of stain and results that you had in this case?
Yes, I think it would be consistent because blood is a very rich source of DNA. There's lots of DNA in blood. So when you have something, let's say from just touching an item, like if I'm touching this microphone or my notes here, I'm less likely to leave behind DNA from touch. It's not as rich of a source of DNA as blood. So if there's blood on my hands, I'm more likely to leave DNA behind from that blood than me actually touching the item.
So if we talk about touch, we're talking about skin cells, right?
It could be skin
Sweat.
cells. It could also be sweat. It could be some saliva, just because we do a lot of things with our hands. Like I run my hand through my hair, I could cough. So there's lots of ways we deposit DNA onto our hands.
But that is a less, as you said, rich source than perhaps what we would find with blood or semen.
Yes.
All right. Let me ask you about another sample, looking at People's 7. It has a 37 in the bottom left corner. If we look at PID 16, this little blue rag, did you obtain any results from this item?
Yes. So this, in my report, was called cutting from a reddish-brown stain on the blue towel. Item 23, PID 16. This DNA profile matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker. The DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately once in greater than 1 septillion unrelated individuals.
So if we're talking about a septillion, how many zeros are we talking about here?
That's a 1 followed by 24 zeros.
Did you also test a stain from the first floor hallway closet door, PID 25.
Yes.
What was the result that you obtained, if any?
The DNA profile obtained from this item was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from, I believe we called this the swab of the reddish-brown stain on the hallway closet, was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
Okay.
So using 15 of 23 locations, that major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
And again, was this a stain that tested positive for blood?
Yes, it tested presumptively positive for blood.
Same hypothetical, if after the murder of Fabio Sementilli, the killer went through the home in order to stage a crime scene and transferred blood onto the closet door, would that be consistent?
Yes.
Looking at a stain from that same area, but this time the hallway floor, PID 26, did you test that item?
Yes.
And what results did you obtain?
The DNA profile obtained from the swab of the reddish-brown stain from the hallway floor was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from the sample is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. Same statistic, using 15 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
And that stain did also chemically test positive for blood?
Yes, it was presumptive positive for blood.
Looking at equals 193, there's a 16 in the bottom left corner. The stain that we see here on the steering wheel in the Porsche, did you test that particular stain?
Yes.
And what result did you obtain?
This was
PID 14.
item 57, correct?
57 is the swab item number, and the PID
Yes.
number is 14.
So the DNA profile obtained from this item matches the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And did that stain also test positive for blood?
Yes, it did.
And did you calculate a statistic?
Yes, this DNA profile occurs approximately once in greater than 1 septillion unrelated individuals.
And you told us a septillion means 24 zeros.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to your report dated May 15th of 2018. Showing you what was previously marked as People 7, page 18 in the lower left corner. Now we're talking about the manual garage door release handle. Did you test a swab of that particular area?
Yes, I did.
And what, if any, results did you obtain? This would be PID 39, swab number 42.
So the DNA profile obtained from the swab of the garage door track release handle is consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker. Using 13 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 900 trillion unrelated individuals. The DNA profile of the minor contributor could not be determined. Sorry. Robert Baker could be included at the remaining locations, but I couldn't determine a major contributor.
So in other words, his the remaining locations were consistent with his profile, his DNA profile.
His DNA profile can be seen in the remaining locations, but I couldn't determine a major DNA profile.
So if we're talking about 1 trillion, how many zeros is that? Or what are we looking at in terms of a number 900 trillion?
This is a 9 followed by 14 zeros.
In November of 2018, were you asked to provide a portion of the reference sample for Robert Baker to a DNA analyst on the sheriff's side of the crime lab?
Yes.
And who did you provide a portion of item 158, that swab, the 2 swabs for Robert Baker? Who did you provide that to?
Criminalist Leslie Thompson.
And do you know Leslie?
I know her from the sheriff's department, but not personally.
But you share, the
facility.
LAPD and the sheriff's department share the same building, correct?
Yes.
For the crime lab purposes.
Yes, that's correct.
I want to talk to you now about your report dated November 12th of 2020 with respect to some of the samples from the crime scene. Did you go back and use the statistical methods that had been implemented after your original reports were issued in order to update the DNA interpretation protocols using some of the newer software available for complex mixtures like StarMix?
Yes. So when we first switched to 23 different locations, we didn't have the statistical software online. But once we brought it online, I was able to go back and look at some of these profiles that I typed at 23 locations and use this statistical software to help me make comparisons using these mixtures.
Previously, I asked you about items in the hallway. Let me just go back in case a photograph is needed. Looking at the hallway here in People 752, we previously spoke about PID 25 that we see here on the a stain, it looks like, on the actual closet door, this tiny little red stain. Was that the stain that you previously gave us results for?
Yes, item 29 PID 25.
Okay. That was the one that was consistent with the victim. We talked about transferring potential blood or DNA onto this area.
Yes.
And looking at the same hallway, the stain on the floor just outside the master bedroom, in People 7 with a 53 in the lower left corner. That was the other sample that we talked about that you said also was consistent with the victim in this case, Fabio Sementilli, correct?
Yes, the swab from the hallway floor, item 29 PID 25.
All right. Now, let's go back now and talk about a couple of the items where you did some recalculations. And I want to start with 14, which is the leading edge deadbolt. There it is. We looked at this before. People 7, there's a 24 in the lower left corner. Did you calculate the statistic using StarMix software?
Yes, I did.
And what did you determine?
So I previously said this was a mixture of two, including at least one male. So now with this statistical software, we're able to determine a few different things. So we have a mixture proportion. Mixture proportion is tells you about how much DNA each contributor contributes to that DNA profile. So we have mixture proportions of 98% and 2%. So the first contributor contributes about 98% of that DNA. The second contributes about 2% of that DNA. Fabio Sementilli is included as that 98% contributor. Robert Baker is excluded from this DNA profile. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 300 quadrillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli and an unknown individual than if it originated from two unknown individuals.
Okay.
The remaining locations were not available for comparison because of Fabio's reference.
So the new statistical methods, if you use StarMix, you use what's referred to now as a likelihood ratio?
Yes. So a likelihood ratio is essentially a ratio of two different probabilities. So in this case, it was a probability that, because it was two individuals, that Fabio and an unknown individual can be included in this DNA profile versus the probability that two unknown individuals could be included in this DNA profile.
So with respect to this particular likelihood ratio, your terminology was at least 300 quadrillion times more likely.
Yes.
Okay. That it originated from the victim and another unknown individual than two unknowns.
That is correct.
Okay. And I previously asked you about items in the kitchen sink. Now I want to refer you to this vinegar bottle, Heinz white vinegar, that we see here in People 7 with a 40 in the lower left corner. And did you test some swabs relative to this item?
I did.
Okay. And with respect to PID 20, looking at this little red dot here, this red stain, swab 25, booked as item number 25 under the DR. Did you obtain any results from that bottle handle?
Yes. So the swab of the handle is consistent with a mixture of three, including at least two males. I obtained mixture proportions of 40%, 35%, and 26%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 40% contributor. Robert Baker is included as the 35% contributor. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 200 sextillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Robert Baker, and an unknown individual than if it originated from three unknown individuals. Because of Fabio's reference sample, the remaining loci were not available for comparison, or the remaining locations.
Okay. So the software program that you utilize now, or that you utilized here in terms of breaking down the percentages, the program actually will tell you the percentages for each contributor, correct? It breaks it down for you.
Yes, it gives us an approximate percentage of how much DNA that contributor is contributing to the profile.
Runner, I have a laboratory photograph of this vinegar bottle along with various notations. May it be marked as People's 196.
Yes.
showing you now what's been marked as People's 196, and there is a 2 in the lower left corner. Can you tell us if you recognize what you see depicted here?
Yes, this is, it's hard to see the vinegar bottle, but there's a vinegar bottle there. This is a photograph that was taken in our laboratory, and it's marked with where the samples were taken.
Okay.
So the swab of the handle that I just spoke about, in our laboratory for our tracking, we called it a limbs number, and it's where you see that 12-4-1. That's where that sample was taken from.
Here?
Yes, and then it's pointing to where the on the handle it was taken.
The handle area here?
Yes.
Okay. And a limbs number is just a laboratory identification management system, correct?
Yes, LIM stands for Laboratory Information Management System.
And so that's just another way, other than PID numbers or property report numbers, of tracking a particular sample?
It's how we, within our laboratory, track samples. So it's laboratory specific.
And did you also take a swab, or did you analyze a swab of the blood stain on the bottle itself?
Yes.
And did you reach any conclusions, obtain any results regarding that item? This would be item 25, PID 20.
Yes. So the blood stain on the bottle, if you look on here, it's 12-4-2. So this was a mixture of 3 contributors, including at least 2 males. I obtained mixture proportions of 83%, 11%, and 6%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 83% contributor. Robert Baker is included as the 6% contributor. Using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 1 septillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Robert Baker, and an unknown individual than if it originated from 3 unknown individuals. And I wasn't able to use the remaining locations because with Fabio's reference, it wasn't available for comparison.
Now, at a subsequent time in March of 2021, did you issue another report going back to this item after receiving a reference swab, a buccal swab, for the defendant, Monica Sementilli, from Detective Mitzi Roberts under item number 201?
I did.
Okay. And did you then go back to look at this particular item, PID 20, item 25, with respect to this vinegar bottle?
I did.
And what, if anything, did you determine at that point?
So like I said before, this was a mixture of 3, including at least 2 males. The mixture proportions were 83%, 11%, and 6%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 83% contributor. Monica Sementilli is included as the 11% contributor. And Robert Baker is included as the 6% contributor. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 1 septillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Monica Sementilli, Robert Baker than if it originated from 3 unknown individuals.
What was that number again?
1 septillion.
So again, how many zeros?
24.
With respect to swab 33, or item number 33, a blood stain from the master bedroom dresser, top drawer, PID 32, was that a sample that you also analyzed for DNA?
Yes, this was a mixture of 2 individuals, including at least 1 male. I obtained mixture proportions of 87% and 13%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 87% contributor. I have limited support for exclusion for Robert Baker. So for Fabio, using 15 of 23 locations, the partial DNA mixture profile is at least 90 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli and an unknown individual than if it originated from two unknown individuals. For Robert, the partial DNA mixture profile is at least 20 times more likely to occur if it originated from two unknown individuals than if it originated from Robert Baker and an unknown individual. So basically, this analysis provides limited support that Robert Baker is excluded from the DNA profile, and we more often observe false exclusions in this likelihood ratio range.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Let's take our adjournment this time till tomorrow 9 o'clock. The admonition applies. You do not discuss this case either among yourselves or with anyone else, or form or express any opinions of the cause finally submitted to you. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
All right, so they are done for the evening. And that was the DNA expert, Randy Zapata. He was just basically saying that there were stains all over the house, the kitchen garage door, or the kitchen, outside, the vinegar bottle, and Baker's DNA is just all over the place. So, all right, so I was just talking with Aaron, and little Rafa had something happened. Well, he had like an accident. He came in and he just stunk to high heaven. I was going to feed him, but he stinks. Stinks. Something happened to him. So that's why I was kind of dipping in and out, trying to clean the guy. Aaron was cleaning him. I was holding him. Nothing worse than like kitty stink. So it's mute on your end. Am I muted? Shoot, didn't happen to him. So okay, nope, never mind. You're just no mute here. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, Rafa had a little accident or something happened. But hopefully we cleaned him up a little bit. He stinks still. Yeah, it's urine. We got him with some soap and water, but now our house smells like cat pee. It's like the worst thing. Luckily, we don't really have carpeting, so that's good. But he does sleep with us, so I'm not looking forward to that. But Aaron got him with some soap and water, and hopefully we got him pretty good. All right, so while all that was going on, we were talking about, so we're going to stream over the weekend, you guys. We want to be caught up for next week, so we want to hit Monday, because I don't know how long Todd Mullis is going to go for. So come Monday, I want to be caught up with Monica. So we're going to be streaming. We're going to stream tomorrow, probably all of day 17, and then we have 18 and 19. So we're going to probably do Saturday and Sunday. So if you guys want to get caught up with Monica, join us over the weekend. Drunky the Bear. So Baker's DNA is in the Porsche, in the kitchen, on the vinegar bottle. Yep. He's all over. His DNA is all, well, it's his blood. His blood is all over the place. Widespread panic. I missed it. Is it urine? My husband has a great odor removing recipe. Yes. We think it's urine. It wasn't like when we wiped him down, it wasn't color, so it wasn't poop. It looked like it was urine. So yeah, put that in the mod chat or email us or something. Yeah, Irish Amy, we tried to wash Mishimu in the sink. She was not amused. Yeah, look at pants. Look at Super Ball. She's like, what is on your hands? Yeah. Super Ball is not happy. I don't really have it on my hands because I was just kind of holding him, and I was holding, yeah. But Super Ball smells it. Let's see. Yeah, Lily Wayne, hooray! Love streaming on the weekend. Yeah, so I didn't realize we're 3 days behind. I didn't realize we were that far behind, you guys. I thought we were. So we just finished day 16. So we have 17, 18, and 19. So 19 was today. So we have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we're gonna do tomorrow after Todd Mullis, whenever Todd Mullis ends, we'll do day 17, and then Saturday we'll do 18, 19. We'll do day. Sunday we'll do day 19. Anyway, we'll do it over the weekend. So. Yeah, cats can smell everything. They sure can. Irish Amy. Even to the point where if one of the other cats are on, because we have towels all over, for them to sit, if we have a towel, if somebody steps on that towel, Super Bowl won't even go near the towel. She's like, nope, won't even go near it. So, okay, when your husband's up tomorrow, I'll get the recipe. Okay, thank you. Yes, Super Bowl is not pleased. That's true. All right, Ola, yep, good night. All the lovely chat. You are a great night therapist, and miss. Thank you. Thanks for streaming. All right, guys, and the mods. Drunky the Bear, thank you, everyone, for your work and your time. Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you being with us today. We're going to pick up on Todd Mullis tomorrow, and then we'll roll that into Monica, day 17. So thank you to Aaron. Thank you to our fantastic mods. We appreciate you guys, and we appreciate our chat so much. And Nanar, yes, their sense of smell is so much stronger than ours. I agree. So, Irish Amy, good night. Widespread Panic, Ola, all you guys, thank you so much. Gina Farley, I will see you guys tomorrow. Todd Mullis starts at 10, so we'll be on at 9:45, and then after that's finished, we'll pick up on Monica Sementilli. So, have a good night. We appreciate you all, and we will see you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.